All right, so we're talking about this idea and this concept of integration. And when we're working to make the body move more efficiently, we're looking to include all parts of the body in that movement. All parts are contributing equally and doing their job, so to speak. And I like using the analogy of a sports team where we have different players on the field and each player has a unique position, role, and responsibility to contribute to the overall goal of scoring points and so on and so forth. And we have some players on that team being more kind of these big movers. They're kind of the spotlight players making the big noticeable plays and scoring points. Well, you have kind of these more supporting role players, which are helping support the team playing defense as stabilizers, if you will. And when all the players on the field are doing their job, the team plays beautifully. But when one or two players start slacking off, what happens is kind of your two or three players, maybe one, two, or three players start to have to work harder to compensate for the lack of contribution on some of these players. And in this situation, it's more likely that these overworked players are gonna burn out or get injured. And so our body operates in a similar way, and that we need all of our players contributing. And in this analogy, some of these areas of our bodies take more of a primary mover role, where some of them are more responsible for stabilizing the body joint or supporting the body through the movement. And so if we go along with kind of this team of players analogy, we can take a team of muscles. For example, we have a team of muscles called the posterior chain, and this posterior chain describes all the muscles that run along the back side of the body. So starting at the base of the neck, the upper back, the mid back, the lower back, your glutes, your hamstrings, your calves, and even the bottom of your foot. And the posterior chain muscles work together to make movements happen, like a glute bridge, a prone Superman or a swimmer exercise, as well as a classic hip hinge deadlift movement. They make these movements possible. And so for whatever reason, if some of these muscles in the posterior chain under contribute, another area must take over in order for that movement to still be possible. It's like if you need 5 units of work to perform a movement, and 1 unit of work comes from each of those muscles in the team, then if a few slack off, then all of a sudden one muscle is now contributing 3 units instead of just its 1. And potentially this muscle isn't meant to take on those 3 units of work or more work. Maybe it needs the support of the other ones. And so just like overworked players, chronic overworking of one particular area can create some issues. Generally, when you have a sensitive area or a trouble spot, you want to look at above and below that sensitive area, and those are usually the areas that need some development in both mobility, so flexibility, mobility, like moving around, and then also strengthening, in order to give that spot just some slack, some rest time. So you kind of support above and below, and then that middle piece gets some rest. And so if we use the example of low back pain, because that's a common example, and we're kind of continuing along this progression of understanding, then we would need to mobilize and strengthen above and below the low back. So that would be the thoracic spine, so your mid and upper back, and then also below your lumbar, which would be below your low back, which would be your hips and your pelvis. Okay, so both mobility and strengthening of the thoracic spine and the hips, and potentially then the low back can relax a little bit because it has the support from above and below. So what I'm getting at here truly is this concept of integration and the importance of looking at all the players on your team and making sure that they are contributing in the way that they need to contribute, so that we don't get an overworking of one area. And when we're moving or doing an exercise which involves this sensitive area, we need to pay specific attention to the areas which should be supporting the sensitive spot, and we need to ask, are they doing their job?